lot of thoughts and feelings around it, right? I don't know about you, but anybody have a perfect mom out there? Oh, there's hands. Come find me after service. Oh, good. Mom's over here like lifting up hands of her kids, like raise your hands. Yes, Mom. Oh, well, I want to meet all of you who had perfect moms because I got to learn from your mom. But the reality is that the topic of being a mom, the topic of is just really difficult. As Jeffrey mentioned and prayed, there's sometimes when you're in life and you're wanting to become a mom and it's not working yet, it hasn't happened yet, or you've experienced miscarriage. And my wife and I walked through that when we were first trying to get pregnant. And now, we're like, I just told Danny last night, I said, just please not tonight. We're under 2 weeks away from being a dad of 4, right? And so there's hope. I just want you to know there's hope as you continue to ask God in that. I believe that God hears your prayer, and there's hope. There's also the reality that some of you moms are like, I'm still waking up because I was up all night with my kids, and I was like, I'm in the middle of my daily grind of just like, I got to get stuff done, I've got to keep the kids alive, and I've got to make food, and I also have a job on the side, right? And you're in the middle of like this daily grind. And then there's moms that are moms of teens, and you're kind of like, what did I do wrong? I thought I did the best I could, right? And it's like this struggle of where a teenager, teens are figuring out life, and you're asking, is it too late for me to be a successful mom? And maybe you grew up with a mom that doesn't have faith, and you're kind of maybe a pioneer of faith for the first in your family, and you're kind of walking through this going, yeah, I didn't really have a great example of a mom, so Mother's Day is a little bit tough for me. Maybe you didn't have a mom at all. You lost your mom at a young age, or for some reason she wasn't a part of your life. And there's just a lot of complicated feelings and emotions, right? And I'm here today to say that I'm right in the middle of it with you. And I hope that you guys are blessed today by what I'm about to share. But I'm in the middle of the loss of my mom. And so on October 29th at 12:01 a.m., it was a Sunday morning, just like my mom, to wait until Sunday, my mom breathed her last breath. And over the last number of months, I'm working through the realities and the feelings and the emotions and the new life that is before me without my mom present. And so as I looked at what was happening today, I was thinking to myself, could somebody else please speak today? And then I looked, and on the calendar, it was my name. And I was like, but God, what a cruel joke, right? But over this week, I've been pondering my mom a lot, and I've been reflecting on her life and the goods and the bads, and asking God, what can we learn from the life of my mom? And today, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I learned as I reflected on who my mom was as a person and the way she lived, the way she raised us. And I hope that this encourages you moms. I hope this encourages you grandmas, because my mom was also an amazing grandma. There's not a Grandma's Day. There might be a Grandma's Day, but you can adopt it today too, right? Okay? But I want to see in our lives and in our church, I want to see families of wonder. I want to see families of wonder that pass on faith from one generation to the next generation. And so I want to ask the question today, how do we build a generational faith? And I think this is one of the key markers in my life that I've gained from my mom and from my parents, is that they had a faith, and they had 5 kids, and 5 out of 5 kids are following Jesus. That's a remarkable statistic. And people will often ask my parents, what did you do to make such wonderful kids like Caleb? And they said he just came out that way. Obviously, you realize that's a joke. But But the reality is that we raise our kids to the best of our ability, right? Any of you trying to do your best with raising kids, or you tried your best? Maybe you're about out of the phase of raising them. And the reality is that we have different views on what success looks like, right? We want our kids to be successful. And so one of our goals might be we just want to keep them alive until they're 18 and they can figure out life on their own, right? Like we're like trying to get them to that stage of life. Maybe you really want them to get good grades in school. So that's the goal. Everything's about good grades because you got to get into a good college that's going to give you a good degree so that you can get a good job that's going to pay you good money so that you can have a family and you can take care of them and right? So you guys beginning to feel like some of the feelings that you might want for your kids, these seem like good things, right? You want them to be a good citizen in the country, and so you teach them about the country so that they understand the do's and the don'ts of what it means to be a citizen, and you want them to be a good citizen. Maybe like sports are a big deal, and you're like, I want my kids to succeed at sports, and they're going to grow up to become a professional athlete, and that's the pinnacle, that's success. And yet I was looking at statistics this week, and 78% of former NFL football players are in financial stress or bankruptcy. 60% of former NBA players are broke. 70 to 80% divorce rates among former professional athletes. And we go, this is success. They've got to become a professional athlete. They'll succeed, right? And yet, in many areas of life, they may have been at the pinnacle of athleticism, and yet their life was falling apart. And so this asks the question of like, what do we want? Like, what is the goal? How do we really raise up our kids the way that God has called us to do it? What does success look like? And I want to propose to you today that generational faith is built on the kingdom perspective of success. And the kingdom perspective of success is love and follow Jesus, love your neighbor, those that are around you, and then raise your kids to do the same. And in that, you see faith moving from one generation to the next, from one generation to the next, from one generation to the next. But what keeps us from doing this? The reality is there's a lot of things vying for our attention. As Pastor Elijah so eloquently and stressfully put in those Next Steps videos, I mean, was anybody's heart like beating a little bit faster? You're like, oh my goodness, I just don't want to deal with this right now. Yeah, I was feeling that too. I was like, and then the quiet, right? And that's what it feels like when God speaks to us. It's in the quiet. But we have so much competition and comparison in our world in which it's like, I have to be like this parent, and if I'm like this parent, now all of a sudden, I'm going to have done my job, I'm going to have done good, and you'll get a A-okay, that a baby, mom? You know, I don't know, that was a weird saying. I just made it up. Sometimes you don't need to say all the things that pop into your head. But the reality is that we see all of these examples of people that we think are parenting better than we are. And we go, man, I'm just failing at life. There's nothing I can do that's right. My kids are going to turn out horrible, and this is the worst. And you're talking about this on Mother's Day. But I want to, hopefully, by the end of today, give you a good example to follow. And my mom, by no means, was a perfect woman. We'll get into that. But she raised us to not rely on her, but to rely on Jesus. I want to encourage you today with some simple things that we can do together to create a church that passes on its faith from one generation to the next, Today we're going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 8. And this is a key passage in the Old Testament, within the Torah of the Bible. This includes what the Jewish people call the Shema, which is a very key principle within Jewish life. This is like one of the sayings that you learn from a young age and you hold on to it. And I want to just read it to us, and then I want to look at what does it look like to have generational faith. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. Doesn't that sound like something Jesus said at one point? These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Now there's a lot in this, and I could go verse by verse, line by line, and tell you exactly what it means. But I want to go a little bit broader today. I don't want to give you a bunch of to-dos. This isn't 10 ways to be a better mom. This isn't a 10 ways to be a better dad. My hope today is to inspire you to think bigger about your role within the life of your kids beyond just keeping them alive. That is an important one, though. Like, don't forget that one. Okay, just saying. I want to show you a few pictures of my mom because I want you to feel and see a little bit of who she was. So this first one you're going to see, these are some pictures from my wedding. Look at that little baby face. I was talking about Danny, not me. I look old. I'm just kidding. I look like a baby. So this is my mom and my dad, and then obviously me and my wife. And then in the center, you'll see my oldest brother, my mom, my dad, my middle brother, my oldest sister over here, Danielle, and my sister that's just a little bit older than me, my sister Bethel, is there. And then last but not least, I want to show you this. I walked into my parents' bedroom. You know that sacred place that you're not supposed to go into? After my mom passed, we were helping my dad go through some things, and I walked in and I saw this. And I thought it was such a profound thing within my mom's home that directly ties to the passage that we see today. This is called the mezuzah, all right? And this is something that you'll often see within Jewish homes in which the Torah is written inside of it, and it's this exact symbol that we just read about, binding the Word of God on your doorpost and your gates. And this is a common thing on the entrances of Jewish homes. And by the way, we're not Jewish. My family's not Jewish in any way. But it just shows that there's a significant piece that this verse played in my mom's heart, that she nailed this to the wall with 6 nails. Like, that's amazing. I don't know. I was looking online this week, and there's a lot of videos out there on the correct way to hang one of these, and I don't think 6 nails was the correct way, but it's the heart that matters, right? It's the heart. But I want you to see her, because as you look at her, you can see she's just a normal lady. She's just like you. And yet, she had an impact on me because she was my mom. And then she had an impact on her grandkids. And I want to show you, before we get through the whole message, what this message looks like, what building a generational faith looks like. Can you guys put up the picture here? These are my nieces and nephews and my kids. And you can see it on that one, and that's where we buried her. And in that moment, that's the end of the influence that she can directly pour into their life. But can I tell you, she poured a lot. And her faith lives on in us as kids. And our faith is being passed in to the next generation. You may be the first follower of Jesus in your home. Did you know that you can be the start of many generations to come that can follow Jesus? Maybe your parents followed Jesus. You can carry on the legacy. You can pass the faith that you've been given on to the next generation. It is not too late. While you still have breath in your lungs, you can make a difference. So how do we do this? Well, I want to encourage you that generational faith begins with you. And just as we read just in a moment, or before this, it says, love the Lord your God. The first commandments are actually to you. As parents, as individuals, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And these commandments I give to you, that they should be on your hearts. It begins with us. That God might place His commandments, His love, His direction, His care for the world, for your kids, for the people around you, that He might place them on your heart. You have to be filled in order to have something to give. And we'll get to giving, but it has to begin with you being filled. And this is a simple principle. I mean, let's think about it. You have a cup of air. Try to drink some water out of it. You can't. There's no water in it. It's just air. But if you put water in, you can receive water, right? I know, you guys know how cups work, right? I know it's a simple concept, but it works the exact same way with your faith. If there's nothing placed inside of you, what can you pour out? And it begins with you. If you want to pass your faith on to the next generation, you have to have a faith to pass on to the next generation. See, my mom set an amazing example in this. And again, I don't want you to hear that my mom was perfect. We'll get to that. She's by no means a perfect woman. But she sought Jesus. I cannot tell you how many times I walked out of my room in the morning, and there's this weird little pink chair that she would sit in. And on one side of her was a notebook that was full of like that, college ruled lined paper, and she would write everything. I mean, she was writing down scripture, she was cross-referencing, she was doing word studies. She was like, she's smart. She was smarter than I was. I mean, she was just going. On the other side, she had her concordance. And a concordance is basically a giant book that tells you where every single word in the Bible is at all times. And now we have them on our phones, and we can look them up on the internet. But she had a physical one that she had. And then in the middle, she had her Bible. And she would spend time in the morning studying the Word, dissecting it. Not just going, well, that's nice, that's a cool verse, but going, what does that mean for me? How do I live this out? What does this mean for my kids? We saw that in how she worshiped. My mom loved music. Music was a significant passion in her life. She was a music teacher. She got a music degree. She taught all of us kids music from a young age. And music was just a part of her that just exuded out. And she loved to worship. Some of my earliest memories in church is my dad standing up with a hymnal and my mom at the piano, and my dad saying, turn to page 567. We're going to sing it as well with my soul in the key of A. And everybody was, like it was just a part of her. And this made an impact beyond just, a Sunday morning. But when we were afraid at night, she would prop our door open and she'd play her piano, simple worship songs as we would go to sleep. And that taught me more than words could ever say, because I learned not to trust in my own strength to overcome fear. I learned to trust the one who helps us. She lived a life of prayer. And we'll talk more about that, but it's just amazing how in each one of these points, her prayer life came up to me and reminded me of, she just prayed. My dad would say, people would ask, how do you get good kids? And he said, well, we prayed. That's about it. That's what I can tell you. That's one thing that we did that we know helped. And maybe you're in a season right now with your kids that you're like, I don't know what to do. Can I tell you, it's never too late to pray. Prayer changes things. She also set an amazing example on what it means to love people. And my mom was the one who noticed the person on the edges, the fringe, the one that, maybe didn't fit in the group of people that were there. And she would befriend them. She would treat them like family. Time and time again, she would do this with people. My brother had a friend who got kicked out of his house, and he came and lived with us for his senior year of high school. And at the memorial, he was sharing with his now wife and 2 kids how it was the first time he had seen a healthy home, and how when she simply made a meal and brought the whole family and forced him to come out of his room to the table, how he learned what it meant to sit at a table and eat a meal and have a conversation in a healthy way with family. He said, I hated it, but I loved it. See, it begins with you. Your children are following your example. They're looking to you and asking the question, not just do your words mean something to you, but does your walk live out what you're saying? But you don't have to be perfect. That's the beauty of it. You just have to be you. Your kids don't want to see a perfect parent. They want to see a real parent who has real problems, who allows Jesus to be in the midst of them. You need to make room in your life to be filled so you have something to offer. Just want to ask, what can you say no to that you could fill your life with something better? What's something in your life that you could let go of so that Jesus could fill more of who you are? The second thing we see in these verses is that generational faith is meant to be multiplied. In Deuteronomy 6, it says, impress them on your children. Impress is kind of an intense word. It's not just like, recommend that it's a good idea. It's not, if they feel like it, they should do this. But it puts the pressure on us as parents to impress upon our children the way of the Lord. Think about it this way. Somebody is going to impress a worldview, a thought life, a value on your children. Wouldn't you want it to be you, the one who loves them the most? Then goes on to say, talk with them when you sit at home and when you walk on the road and when you lie down and when you get up. This means in all parts of life, let your faith be evident. In all parts of your life, allow conversations to happen. And boy, did my mom let conversations happen. See, parenting is giving your kids not building their life for them, but giving them the building blocks in which they can build their own faith. You can't do it for your kids. There's no way that you can force your faith on your kids, but you can give them the building blocks in which they can build their own faith. You can give them the example to follow in which they could say, it's possible, or I want that. Many times driving down the road, I grew up in Montana, so you have to drive to get anywhere. I mean, we would go school shopping, and it was an hour and a half drive there and back. That was a day trip, right? And here we're like, ooh, I think I might have to get a hotel, right? But we would drive, and I'm saying for 90 minutes straight, all I had to do was, oh, cool, yep. Because she would be impressing upon me many, many things. And again, like I shared, as I was going to bed, she would impress upon me who is my comfort. At the dinner table, she would impress upon me through prayer what was really valuable. She had this annoying habit. She loved to pray, and we just wanted to eat. And we came up with this, what I now like to think as loving term to describe the length of the prayer. Maybe it wasn't as respectful as it should have been at the time. But we would call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 missionary prayers. And what that meant is the number of missionaries that she prayed for before we could eat our food. And we're just sitting there like, Mom, we're at like 6 right now. Come on, like, we get it. We get it. Like, we need to pray for our missionaries. But she had a passion for people who were living in full faith and trust in Jesus. She wanted to get behind them in prayer, and she wanted us to know that the people that are outside of our 4 walls matter. And now I look at that with fondness going, man, I hope my kids see that same love for lost people in me. She also taught me priorities in life. You see, she said no for me so that I learned to say yes to the right things. And as kids, there's a lot of things you want, you think you need, you think are going to make you successful in life. But my mom said no to things so that I might say yes to the right things. I can remember telling my coach, yeah, I'm not going to be at that sport game because it's on Wednesday night and we got church. And I hated it. I'm a high responsibility person, so I feel it deeply. Like, I was like, I'm letting down my team. I'm the worst one on the team, but I'm letting them down. That bench isn't going to warm itself. But she taught me to say no to things in life so that I would say yes to the right things. See, parenting is a sacrifice of yourself. This isn't new to you. You've experienced this. But it's a sacrifice of yourself for the growing of someone else. And this Mother's Day, we express our thanks to the moms for what they've given to us, what they've poured into us, how they've shown us and raised us, right? And that's what we do. Without getting thanks, we pour out of ourselves day in, day out. Night times, too. Many of you moms are working through night times right now, right? Night times, you're pouring out of yourself all the time. Not for your benefit, but for the benefit of our children. And if we do that so much for the physical things, how much more should we be doing that for the spiritual? And it's incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. But it's incredibly rewarding. And I just want to encourage you, how you speak about yourself and how you speak about others directly relates to how your kids one day will speak about themselves and speak about others. If you are telling yourself, I'm not beautiful, I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable, what are your kids going to hear? If mom's not beautiful, worthy, and valuable, then I definitely am not. See, we can speak life into our kids. We can build them up. One of the greatest things we can give to our kids is a confidence in who they are and who Jesus has made them to be. But I want to encourage you, you are making a bigger impact than you know. I know you feel like you're just making it. I know you feel like there's no way that this is going to go well, but you are making a bigger impact than you know. So where are you sharing your faith? Are you sharing it on the road as your kids lie down, when you're at the table? Where could you bring your faith into the midst of your parenting? The last thing is that Generational faith withstands the ups and downs of life. And let's be honest, we have a lot of ups and downs in life. From our emotions, as you can see today, highs, lows, laughter, crying. You've experienced about as many emotions as you want to experience in your lifetime in like 30 minutes, right? We have highs and lows, ups and downs. Our circumstances, there's things that happen outside of our control that can either take us we're elated, we're excited, or we're like at the bottom of the barrel. This is not good. Our imperfections. And the reality is that we all feel imperfect because we are imperfect. And that can either drive us down to the bottom, or we can learn how to trust Jesus in the midst of our imperfections. Again, we fight with comparison, in which we compare our worst with everyone else's best. And we face a world in which ideologies are constantly changing, and we just are like, I don't know, is it up or down today? Things are wild, right? But I want to encourage you with a verse from Ephesians 4. It says, then we will be no longer infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown from here and there by every wind of teaching, by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. What I love about that is this picture of growing up in which whether the highs are high or the lows are low, whether things are good or whether they're bad, there's a firm foundation in which your life has been built on. See, God has called us to give our kids a steadfast foundation to rely on. That no matter what comes their way, they may remain firm and secure. But what does this mean, firm and secure? Does this mean that you don't face the storms? Does it mean that you don't experience the highs or the lows? No, it means that you still feel the effects of the day in and the day out experience of your life. But there's a peace in which you know that God is with you in the midst of it. And this is where I want to share just a little bit of some of the struggles my mom faced. And I don't do this to dishonor her, but I actually feel like this just shows a little bit more of who she was. And I want you to know that there was very real things that happened in my mom's life that she couldn't control all the time, that had very real impacts on all of us differently as kids, depending on where we were at in our development. And when my oldest brother was in his young ages, he was probably 6 or 7, 8, my mom had a struggle with mental health in which she had to leave the home for a period of time before she could come back. This was a very real thing. And I had heard rumors of it as a kid, but I had never experienced it until my junior and senior year, when she was off on her own and she basically just went non-functioning. And in the midst of that, as a kid, you go, where's my mom? Like, what do I do with this? I don't know how to deal with this incongruity. Like, I don't know how to face this. And I remember going to school and feeling incredibly distracted. Like, I couldn't focus on what the teacher was saying. I was like the kid that was like, I got good grades, I focused. I was like the one kid that paid attention in school, and yet I found myself like, I don't even know what I just heard in that class. And I began to understand a little bit of what people who have tough home lives experience and how difficult it can be to focus and do well in school. And I would go home to answer a number of questions for my mom that I felt like I shouldn't have needed to answer. That her as an adult, she should have been able to answer them herself, but it was because her mind was not doing what it needed to be doing. And she always felt this limitation of that she required chemical pills to help her mind to be steady. And it was a constant battle that she faced in her life, in which she would plead to God that he would take it away from her. that he would heal her mind, that he would restore it fully, that she would be able to function the way that she once functioned without needing help. And again, this had many effects on us as kids, each of us in different ways. But what can I tell you, that the thing that stands out to me the most is at the end of the day, she continued to put her faith in Jesus. That in the midst of not knowing why he didn't take it away from her, why he didn't fully restore her mind, she continued to worship every Sunday. She continued to teach us as kids to the best of her ability. It doesn't mean that it was all easier, that she always said or did the right thing, or even that there was parts of her motherhood that she didn't regret. And that can be something that can be a heavy weight to carry. I'm sure many of you have experienced that, feeling that regret, that pain. But I also saw out of it that my mom prayed. She prayed over us as kids that we would never have to walk through what she walked through. She prayed that it would not be transferred from one generation to the next. She continued to turn to Jesus. In the midst of her struggle, in the midst of her imperfection, in the midst of the things that she couldn't control, she turned to Jesus. And she gave us an example of what it looks like to trust Jesus in the midst of difficulty, struggles. I just want to encourage you that you don't have to be a perfect parent. You're not going to get it right all the time. You're going to say things wrong. You're going to do things wrong. There's going to be things that happen in your home that you can't control. But what you can do is you can continue to turn your trust and your eyes to Jesus. You can continue to trust Jesus in the midst of your imperfections, in the midst of your difficulties, in the midst of your self-doubt and your worry and your anxiety and your fear. And let's be honest, we all need a little counseling from our childhood. And we got to keep the future counselors of the next generation employed by passing some things on to our kids, right? But the other thing she did is she gave us incredible examples of heroes of faith to look up to. Because the reality is that none of us reach the pinnacle in every area of our life. And nobody has in history except for Jesus. But you can look back throughout history and you can see great examples of men and women of great faith. That you can say, yeah, I'm not perfect in that area. But look at this person. Isn't it amazing that God did this through them? And I'm happy to tell you that now my mom is whole. She's whole in body and in mind. She's worshiping her Creator. She has no sadness. While I cry, she is full of eternal joy, everlasting joy. I just want to encourage you today. You are making an incredible impact on your kids, on your grandkids. You're teaching them. Will you impart generational faith? is your continual decision to remain steadfast in faith. Give as an example to your kids on how to respond when they face the difficulties of life ahead. I just want to take a moment. I want to just allow Jesus to do some ministering to your heart today. I just want to take some moments to reflect. And maybe you, like me, have lost your mom and you're reflecting on some of the things that she taught you. I just want to ask a simple question. What do you miss? What's something you miss about your mom? What's something she taught you? Maybe you still have your mom, and maybe she's a parent of faith, and maybe she doesn't have faith. I just want to challenge you to find something to be thankful for today. In the midst of your own parents' imperfection, what's something that you can be grateful for that they've imparted to you? And maybe you're in the room and you're desiring to be a mom. I just want to encourage you, begin praying now. Begin building your foundation now. Begin loving those around you now. Begin trusting in the good and the bad of life, in the one who created you. And lastly, I want to just speak to anybody that's currently parenting. This is their phase. Maybe it's parenting or grandparenting. I just want to ask you the question: what will you pass down to the next generation? What will you impress upon your children for the generations to come? Jesus, we thank you. We thank you that in your word we find comfort, we find strength, we find healing, we find wisdom and truth. Jesus, we acknowledge that we are incredibly imperfect people. And yet, you use us. You've called us to build a generational faith from one generation to the next. So reveal yourself to us. Use us to impart and to impress your kingdom onto the next generation. And help us to trust you in the midst of whatever comes our way. In Jesus' name.